us at this Young Audio Masterclass. It's very exciting to have you all here, and hopefully it's going to be a really useful hour for anyone interested in a career in radio, audio and media. And my name's George. I'm head of marketing at Radiocentre and run the Young Audio Awards, and I'm also a radio presenter on the station Fun Kids, and we are very much live this afternoon. So please do bear with us if there are any technical hiccups or dogs barking in the background. Excuse us. Having said that, we should kind of all be used to video calls by now. It's been about 4 months of looking into a screen. But of course, I do fully anticipate having the same issue that every video chat has, which is telling the person you're speaking to that they're on mute. Happens every time. You'd have thought we'd all have got used to it by now, but clearly not. Okay, let's crack on with the masterclass. We have 4 brilliant young audio professionals joining us today. They work across a range of audio sectors and job roles to give you a taste of the different kinds of career that you can have in the sector. So first up is an amazing KISS radio presenter. She's also the voice of BBC Sounds and a Young Audio Awards ambassador. Oof, I'm exhausted just reading out that list. This is usually the point, of course, where I'd ask you to make some noise, but we can't hear you. So just give us a virtual wave to the very talented Swarzy. Hello, Swarzy.
Hello, how are you?
I am very good, Swarzy. Thank you so much for joining us on this panel. You are, as I just mentioned, you're all over both commercial radio and BBC radio and podcasts. So how long have you been doing your KISS show? Let's start there. And can you also tell us a bit more about the BBC Sound stuff, just to get a bit of background about all this amazing stuff you do?
Yeah, so I started KISS Breakfast last year, January. But to anyone watching, I want to encourage you, I didn't start radio with any radio experience. I actually started radio from winning the KISS Chosen One competition. So my boyfriend dared me to go along and say, why don't you pretend to already be a KISS presenter and get everyone to kind of make the show reel and then submit it. And about a week later, they said, hello, you've made it through to the top 20 academy at KISS. I thought, what on earth? So fast forward to 2019, I got the KISS Breakfast job on a Saturday morning, and so I host KISS Breakfast from 6 to 9 a.m. every Saturday morning, and also bits on KISS Fresh as well. And then a massive shout out to the BBC Sounds team who heard me, and it was actually a really good friend who used to be a producer at KISS who jumped over to the Beeb, and they were looking for a BBC Sounds voice, a young voice. And so they knocked on my door and said, can you try this voice, and this voice? And so after a few attempts, I got into it, and now I'm the voice of BBC Sounds. So it is really, really cool to have a job in radio.
It's so cool. You are the voice of BBC Sounds. Amazing. And of course, a KISS presenter. That's probably more cool if you ask me. So before you won this incredible KISS competition, and actually it's quite funny now because you are a Young Audio Awards ambassador, a competition which looks to recognise young talent. But before you won your competition, had you been trying to get into the industry for a while, or was it like, okay, I want to do this, that's the first thing I'm going to do?
Not at all. I didn't know anything about radio. I never studied radio at GCSE or A-level. I don't have any family members in radio. But my bag is live presenting events and conversations and panels. And I actually started out in church. We used to have a youth group that used to meet up every Friday, and they had a drama group that I got plugged in with. And so everything that I was doing in my youth group is pretty much what I do on a regular basis in radio. So it's often a lot of improvisation, a lot of interviews, and I really, really built my confidence at a youth group. And then fast forward to 2016, like I said, I didn't even know about this competition. It was my boyfriend that said, why don't you go down and do it? And I was so nervous, but from family and friends who encouraged me, I'm so glad I entered. And then, yeah, now I'm hosting KISS Breakfast on a Saturday morning. So had no fingers in any radio pies, absolutely got started off in a youth group, and now fast forward, I'm in radio.
But I actually think that is a really interesting, almost bit of advice that you've said there for people watching right now, because you have basically taken what you were doing before you were in radio and audio, and you're just being yourself. You were really just extending out your personality across the airwaves. So I think that's the first nugget of advice we've had today. So thank you for that, Swarzy. And we're definitely going to be hearing more from Swarzy in a minute. But now let's welcome our second Young Audio Masterclass panelist from Capital XTRA. It's Remel London. Remel, are you there? She's on the way.
Hey, guys.
Here she is. Hey, Remel. How are you?
I'm good. I feel like it's a lot faster on my side because I was here ages ago. But hello.
So, Remel, you are, I'm going to crack straight into this. You are a great example of someone who works across the media sector because you've got your Capital Extra show, you've got a podcast, you do TV hosting, you do events as well. So do you think it's important to have fingers in as many pies as possible?
I think a lot of the time you organically move across a lot of the sectors because I initially knew I wanted to be a TV and radio presenter. I refused to choose because I love them both equally. But I've managed to be able to host because, you know, being on the radio, being on TV is just a part of the skill. I do voiceovers. Again, it's like similar to what Swarzy was saying. Your voice is just naturally trained to say things in different ways. So it's not always a fingers in pies. It's just sometimes the opportunities just keep on coming once you step into the media industry. So I'm grateful that I enjoy all of them and can do them equally.
So would you recommend to everybody watching right now, you know, at the start of their journey, would you recommend that they focus in on one area of media, or should they try and branch out into multiple areas?
Personally, I don't think you need to only do one thing. You may find that you enjoy one more than the other. So I think go with what you enjoy more than feeling like you have to do everything. Because for me, I've had spells where I'm really enjoying radio or I'm really enjoying TV. So I'm kind of not afraid to say, actually, I don't want to do this right now. I'd prefer to focus on that. So of course you can decide, you know what, I want to be a specialist in this, but you're more than welcome. The industry is open for every opportunity. So you're more than welcome to kind of switch between whichever one you choose, in my opinion.
Hello, I thought I would jump on because you are still connected. You're still here. I think we've just lost George.
Oh, no.
So I'm going to go ahead and bring in our third guest, who is Darby from Something Else, who's an executive producer over at Something Else. And he's going to tell us a little bit more about what he does because it's completely different to sort of the same thing you and Swarzy do. So hi, Dobie.
Hey, can you hear me? Or see me?
Yes, perfect.
Great, cool. So yeah, why don't I tell you a bit about what I do in my current role? So I'm an exec producer at Something Else. So we're the UK's largest independent audio production company and agency. So we make a huge variety of content, not just in audio, but in social and TV as well. But my expertise are in speech audio. So we make about 40 music radio shows across the BBC national networks. We make our own podcast, which we launch ourselves. So from stuff like David Tennant's podcast to true crime, like the Fred and Rose West tapes. And then we make basically content for brands and broadcasters in audio. So stuff like the Penguin podcast, or some of my shows are panel shows for Radio 4. So I've been in this role for quite a long time. I basically sort of cut my teeth in audio through Something Else. So I started as an AP at Something Else in 2012, and then have basically worked my way up from there to exec producer now in the intervening years. So yeah, I'm kind of dyed in the wool at Something Else.
Brilliant. And I think we do have George back now, so I'm going to bring him back. Much better than I am at this.
There you go. Darby, so I don't know, I actually missed your introduction there, but if you haven't said so already, I would love to know what Something Else is and how it fits in the wider audio landscape, as some of our audience may not know about production companies.
Sure. So I did do a bit of that, but let me kind of give you a bit more of a sense of it. So audio production companies, I guess if you look at the BBC as a good starting point for this, you have got independents who are making content right across the BBC. So not just audio, but all the stuff that the BBC makes. So radio networks like Radio 1, 2, 3, 4 will all have tender rounds every year, and they'll put out open commissioning rounds for new ideas. So you can go to them with documentary or series ideas or new formats, and you can also go to them to compete for their regular strands or some of the strands on their networks. So you've got independent production companies who traditionally across the audio sector have produced content for people like the BBC in that way. But now it's kind of a much more interesting and kind of more open playing field, I would say, in the sense that podcasting obviously has changed the game in audio production. So you've got brands directly commissioning podcasts for their brands. So I mentioned the Penguin podcast briefly. So we make a podcast directly for Penguin Random House, which is interviewing their authors, but also people like Netflix. So we make the official podcast for The Crown, which is obviously massive on Netflix. That's Netflix's first original podcast where they just kind of realized the huge potential in the podcast space for one of those accompanying podcasts that runs alongside a hit TV show like that. So what was maybe 8-10 years ago kind of for audio production companies like us as we were then, more traditionally a kind of route through BBC commissioning, that's now a portion of our business, but it's much wider. So we also launch our own podcasts, which we create and back ourselves. And we've got a joint venture with Sony Music. So we work with them to launch our own titles. Like, I mentioned a couple, but like the David Tennant podcast is one of the biggest ones that people might be aware of. That's one of ours that we kind of went, this is a great idea, let's make it, let's put it out. Whereas previously we got commissioned by someone like the BBC to make content like that.
I think, it shows as well that there are jobs available and opportunities available in the audio sector, which aren't just a radio station. So it's interesting to know. We'll be finding out more about it in a bit. Time now, though, to say hello to our fourth and final panel member. She is an assistant producer on Steve Wright in the Afternoon on BBC Radio 2. It's Rozeena Barnard. Hello, Rozeena.
Hello.
Hey. Right, so what I want to know is, what is the day-to-day life like for an assistant producer at BBC Radio 2?
Okay, so it's slightly different depending on the different shows, but it's a lot of preparing scripts. So we write scripts for our radio presenters. We're creating schedules, so music schedules with all the different songs and the different features that we have. We're also contacting members of the public who may be taking part in our show. So that's also something we do. I mean, there's a long list of stuff we do. I mean, on my show, Steve Wright in the Afternoon, we also have an entertainment section. So we talk about the latest things happening in the news. So my job is to search the internet for the most recent current things happening in the news, anything showbiz related, anything fun that we can include in our show. So I spend a lot of the time doing research. Another big thing that we do is guest notes. So we write lots of notes for our celebrity guests. So that is something definitely that I think across the board, most APs will do. A lot of research, writing scripts and getting more information about our guests. I'm sure I've missed out loads of things, but yeah, the list is endless.
Yeah, it sounds like you do a lot is the answer to that question. By the way, who's the best guest you've had on the show?
Oh, how long have we got? I think I loved meeting Denzel Washington. He was lovely. Denzel Washington was really nice. Who else is there? Sam Smith. He was really nice. And, well, yeah, I could keep going, honestly.
Yeah. Then Denzel is a pretty good one. Everybody that's watching, by the way, don't forget to get your questions sent in. Let's get to one now. So, Darby, this one actually could be a good one for you because Caitlin has asked, do you have any tips for someone interested in making, producing / directing audio dramas?
Interesting. Yeah, so I would first, if you haven't already, just as a kind of obvious first step, but totally immerse yourself in that world to begin with. So again, like, audio itself has grown so much in the last 5 years or so, but audio drama especially, there's so much more of it now. There's so much out there, and maybe you're already listening to it, but explore some of the more exciting audio drama podcasts, which are really playful and kind of non-traditional, away from the kind of BBC traditional kind of drama school, if you like. So I would look at that first of all, and then I'd spend a bit of time associating yourselves with the production companies that are behind those that appeal to you the most. So they might not all even necessarily be in the UK. In fact, lots of them probably won't be if you're listening to podcasts. But I would spend a little bit of time looking at those publishers and producers who are behind those audio dramas. That would be a really good starting point. And then I would, if I were you, reach out, and I'd always recommend this, to be honest, whether it's drama or any other audio production, I'd totally reach out to the people behind the work that you are interested in and the kind of stuff that you think you might want to be involved in. And I'd ask them to have a conversation. I would say have a coffee. At the moment, that's probably not realistic, but reach out to them and ask if they've got a little bit of time just to have a conversation with you. And often you'll sort of maybe presume that people will say no to that, but you'd be surprised the amount of people who good people in the industry would be up for having a chat, especially when you're telling them how great their work is and how much you appreciate and enjoy it. So I'd say that would be a really good starting point.
So I've got a quick question for all of you now, and if you each give me just a quick answer, and we'll start with Remel here. I'd love to know how each of you landed your first significant role in the industry.
Okay, for me, I went to uni and I studied broadcast journalism. So that taught me how to create audio and create TV. And as soon as I got out of uni, YouTube was my everything, as it still is for a lot of creators. So I automatically started recording, and I used to have a podcast like way back when. I had a podcast in 2011 that was about, it was like an open mic style, send in music and we'll rate it. And then I turned that into an event, which I then hosted, and I filmed it. And again, I just created and just kind of pushed out what the image I wanted to get people to understand what I'm into. So definitely music and entertainment and stuff like that. And that got a lot of attention from a lot of industry people. And then people started to realize that I was a music girl about town. And I started getting events bookings and then started getting pilot opportunities for radio, same with TV. So yeah, it was the fact that I just started creating using the skills that I had. So that's what I'd recommend to anyone.
What about Rozeena? What about you? How did you land that? Was it Radio 2? Was that your first?
So I did my first job in radio was I did an internship actually for 1 year at Radio 2. And I think what helped me in my interview process is that I was really fortunate enough to go to the Brit School, a performing arts school in Croydon, and they have a radio station there. And I worked on the radio station while I was at the school. And so I got to learn radio quite young, and I got to do lots of different jobs in radio. I got to produce, I got to present. They even allowed us to create our own jingles. They taught us how to edit audio, so interviews that we did. And so I had a really good understanding of the industry. So when I went into my interview, and I had the same advice at every interview, is that I used those examples. They may not be huge. It's a local school radio station, but it was experiences that I could use at Radio 2. So I said that when they ask you that typical question of when you've solved a problem, I used the problem I'd solved on that radio station as my answer. And yeah, it's not the biggest thing, but it shows that I'm capable of solving a problem. And so, yeah, I think that's how I came into it. And that really helped me. All my experiences that I spoke about in my interview made me sound very well-rounded, and I understood the industry that I was trying to get into. So yeah, that was really good for me.
And Darby, what about yourself?
So I did a radio production degree at university, which obviously gave me sort of a base level of production skills. But I think kind of more importantly than that, what it did was introduce me to sort of a lot of guest lecturers there who were people directly involved in all different bits of the audio industry. And so I didn't really know I enjoyed radio, full stop. Like I didn't have a specific kind of career path that ahead of me that I was pursuing when I jumped into radio and a degree in it. So I kind of just tried to talk to those people and ask if I could shadow them, and most of them said yes. So I got bits of work experience and shadowing through Global at Classic FM and at Capital and places like that. And then through that led to a conversation with one of those people who had just started up his own independent production company, was making documentaries for Radio 2 and Radio 1. And he just asked me to initially do some research to kind of try and come up with new ideas for commissions, ideas for programs that might get made. And within the space of about 6-7 months, one of those led to a commission, which I got to work on. And, it was the first piece of paid radio work, but while I was at uni. So I think that was actually equally important to learning the kind of skills base that you've got more formally through a degree.
Yeah, absolutely. Swarzy, we already know how you landed your role through Kisses Chosen One. However, we do have a question someone has sent in on slide.do. That code, one more time, 60452. And the question is, how much training were you given by KISS if you didn't have any radio experience beforehand? And actually, I'm going to throw something onto that, the end of that. Did you feel like that training helped, or did you just feel like being yourself was the most important thing?
That's a great question. So when I first entered into a radio studio, I was like, which button do I not press to make sure I don't go off air? I didn't know anything. I'd never ever seen inside a radio studio before. And I had training that was maybe, I think twice a week. But really where my training came in was coming in and shadowing a lot of the people who are already in the full swing of radio. And if it's one piece of advice I could add is make sure that you're shadowing people who are way ahead of you, because you learn best in the moment. And so, yes, I did get training, but I think my real kind of knack for radio came from watching people in full flow. And just to go back to your other question as well, George, I think really KISS became real for me after 2 weeks of winning the competition, because we had the KISS Haunted House Party. And randomly, I'm in the makeup office and they said, would you like to interview Craig David? And I was like, what? And then honestly, about half an hour later, we had to do an impromptu interview with Craig David. And I'm standing here next to him thinking, this job is really real. And so what I say to what you said about being yourself, I could only interview Craig David as myself because I hadn't had any training up until that point. So really and honestly, make sure that your voice is authentic, talk about things that you know, and yeah, your personality will cause you to fly.
So this is something that we've touched upon, a few of you have touched upon, and I know it's a really big question for young people, so I wanted to ask it, especially young people with an interest in the media, whether university is there's certainly benefits to both sides of the discussion, but I would love to hear what you guys think. So Remel, as you said earlier, you went to university, so what's your kind of opinion on it?
Oh, okay. Well, I studied broadcast journalism at the University of Leeds. First of all, going to Leeds was an amazing opportunity experience. It really kind of took me out of the London bubble that a lot of us Londoners have, just being so used to being at home, feeling like everything's in arm's reach. And it just made me really appreciate just, networking and getting to know people and meet people. So for me, university is great for world skills, social skills in general. But specifically with my course, at the time, I'll be honest, I did not appreciate it. I really was bored. I was like, when are we going to get to film? When can I be on TV? Like, I was just ready. I was like, really have to wait 3 years. And, some people are ready as soon as they turn 18 to go out into the world and get a job. Me, I'm actually really glad that I was able to take the time to learn more about different sectors. I probably wouldn't have known about blogging, podcasts, or knowing that I actually can be a producer, not just a presenter. So I think there are things that you think you know about the industry, but actually sometimes it's better to learn as much as you can. And of course you can do that independently, but I think it was really great having other peers that are doing the same course, reading same thing. You can talk amongst yourself. And so many of the people that I went to uni with are killing it in the industry. So the fact that I have them as my networks, already it's a win. So yeah, that's been, for me, again, as a social networking experiment, it was perfect. And I really do appreciate the skills I learned, even though while I was in it, I didn't like it. I'm just thinking the real.
Well, Rozeena, what about you? Where do you stand on the uni?
Yeah, so I went to uni, but I did theatre at university. So slightly different, because I originally thought I was going to be a theatre teacher, but I loved radio at the same time. I think university is good. And I think the one thing I would say to anyone who is in uni or going, take that opportunity to do lots of different things. So whether you are studying accountancy or whatever, but you really love radio, then join their local radio station, start up your podcast. That's when you have so much free time. You have one lecture a day. Use that time to do things, present on TV, and then you can work out what you like, what you don't like. Plus you have this show reel now that when you go into the real world and you've graduated, you can use that to help you get jobs. And I think nothing sells you more than people seeing you doing it, rather than saying, well, I learned a module about this and it was great, but what have you done? Use that time to just go out there and do loads of different things.
So on that note, Swarzy, would you say that, university or not university, it's about doing things. It's about getting yourself out there, working hard. So, is there an argument to say, actually, university may not be right for everybody and it totally is not needed for a career in media?
I can't hear everyone who's gone, so apologies if I'm going to repeat anyone. I think the conversation is around education and whether or not you need to go to university. One, no, you do not need to go to university. I'm an absolute example of someone who didn't study radio at university or didn't have any experience or background in student radio. But what I can say is that university is a really good tool for understanding deadlines, for understanding working with people, for understanding all the different ways that you will find yourself working when you get into radio. But the other thing to say is, I'm still a student at the University of YouTube. So if there's something I do not know, best believe I'm on my Google thinking, how do I do this? How do I do that? But for young people watching, what is in your hands? You most likely have a phone. You most likely have access to the internet. So maybe it's about starting a SoundCloud. Maybe it's about jumping on IG Live and really honing in some of these presenter skills or producing skills. So whether or not you want to go to university and whether or not you do, it's really good to use the tools in your hand to start perfecting the craft for the industry that you would love to jump into.
Yeah, great answer. Thank you, Swarzy. So something that a few of you have already mentioned, because we've talked about podcasts, we've talked about YouTube. And when I think back, I remember when I was about 15, very enthusiastic about radio, wanted to be involved in radio, presenting or producing. And I tried to get a hospital radio show at the time and they wouldn't have me. And frankly, who can blame them? But I think the opportunity now for young people, it's a bit different because you don't need to go and rely on necessarily, whilst hospital radio is fantastic, as is local and community radio, but you don't necessarily have to rely on that to kind of get your voice heard, because now more than ever, you can have your YouTube channel, have your podcast, do your show at home. So Darby, as someone who creates audio for a living, what advice would you give to our audience in regards to making content themselves right here, right now, and not waiting for anybody else?
Yeah, so I would take your time before you get stuck into it to do your research and think carefully about what you're creating and what's already existing in that space. So it's something we would do anyway if we were going to create a new podcast that we wanted to be massively commercially successful, is we would analyze the space that you want it to exist in. Would it analyze the kind of stuff that you're going to be talking about, whatever that is, whatever your subject matter is and whatever your passion is. So I spend a bit of time thinking about that first. And then, like some of the others were saying, no matter what your kind of experience and your skills base, but kind of, skill up basically. Spend time before you just kind of launch straight into it. Just have a think around all of that. That might be a process of like a few days or a few weeks, but get really stuck into that before you start to create something. And then, I think the world is your oyster in terms of creating content, and you can learn on the job in a way now that you couldn't have done a decade ago. So creating, like, the amount that you can learn through creating is kind of immeasurable. And as the other guys were saying, you do learn a lot of really important skills through something like university, but the process, and you do create there, but the process of creating stuff and putting it out and getting other people to listen to it and giving you feedback, that's the other thing that's really important, I would say, is get people, get your friends, get peers, get your family, whoever, to listen to what you're creating and give you notes on it and what they like and what they don't like, and ask for constructive criticism, and don't take it too to heart if everyone doesn't love it straight away. Try and take some of that on board and develop what you're doing and keep honing it and kind of putting yourself into it. And the skills and that you'll develop through doing that are so invaluable, really. So I think it's a really, really good thing to be doing, whether you want to be in production or the other side of the mic. It's a really, really good thing all around. Yeah,
absolutely. Now, we have a question in from Ben at sly.do, the code 60452. And Ben has asked, And I'm going to ask Rozeena to have a go at this first. Ben's asked, how do you deal with things going wrong on air? Because I'm imagining behind the scenes, Steve writes on the radio, something happens, you've got to fix it. Talk me through that.
Okay, so my first thing is don't panic. I learned that. Yeah, I find as an individual, I worry a lot. And so as soon as I got into the producer chair, I had to get rid of that. It's just because as soon as you panic, you can't think properly. And when you can't think properly, you make mistakes. So I would say, always, if you're the producer, I'd say, see if you can get help. If it's a problem where, I don't know, if you're live on air and it's something to do with a computer, for example, see if there's someone nearby that can help and maybe print that stuff off for you. I mean, it's quite a big one to say if there's a problem because it could be anything. I also, it's a lot of problem solving. So if we have loads of guests on our show, so Steve has loads of guests, so we've got to be good at communicating. So I will make sure that I communicate with everyone if there's a problem, because I find that if there's a problem only I know and I can't fix it, that's no good to no one. So it's good to communicate with other people because then they might be able to help you in a way that you didn't realise. It's quite a wide question to deal with problems. But yeah, definitely say be good at communicating. Don't panic. Prepare. I also say always be prepared, because if you don't prepare, then you're opening yourself up for more failure. So a lot of the times if things do go wrong, sometimes if you've prepared enough, you'll know what you need to do to fix it. But yeah, if it's technical faults, just think quickly on your feet. It's a difficult one actually, because it depends on the situation for what I would say how to solve it. But yeah, that's kind of some of the things I would do.
Yeah, amazing. Someone that we both work with, Phil, who's a producer at Radio 2 as well, he once said when we were talking about this, producing something, he said, like, have a plan, have your plan A, have your plan B for when plan A goes wrong, have your plan C for when plan B goes wrong, and just, as you say, just be prepared for everything. That was I thought.
Yeah.
So we've had a question in, Remel, which I'd love for you to give your thoughts on. It's So we haven't had a name attached to this, but it's what can we be doing? All good questions start without a name, don't they? What can we be doing to help getting into the industry now, as lots of work experience has been abandoned this year, especially producing as well as presenting, which is, it's obviously such a strange time, and the opportunities usually available for people to go in and shadow, and they may not be here. So have you got any thoughts, any advice?
Right. Yeah, definitely. Now is the time to get creative. I personally, and this is from my own experience, I've been using this time to research, to learn more about the industry. Because, I've had shows that have been cancelled. I've had a lot of free time. So that's partly where I've had the opportunity to do my podcast. All of my guests couldn't say no because I know you're at home. So you're not too busy to be on my podcast this time round. So I've been able to get a lot of great content from creatives that are having their downtime. I've been researching more, and I've also been networking. Like, as much as, and I'm a big advocate for networking. As much as we can't physically go to events, there's so much online. So for example, something like this, watching this, getting all of our details professionally, and then contacting afterwards, and then asking for opportunities, asking for advice, because you don't always have to physically be able to meet with someone to ask questions and to say, throw forward, hi, when we do get back into the studio, I'd love to come in and shadow you. And when we do get opportunities, and a lot's going to change, like technology is changing as well, like get ready. Be prepared again for when we do come back. Maybe that means in this time you are creating some, short content online, or you're drafting up a pitch. Like, I've been going pitch crazy. I'm like, when we are back, this is what I want to do. And, it's all about using your time well, and, don't let quarantine, lockdown, or a pandemic stop you from being you. Like, if you've got an idea, please do keep pushing on with the idea. Don't let time stop you, because everything has its season, and I think this is the time for us to really reflect and really look into what we really want to do and what we're passionate about. And that passion can lead to a massive job opportunity. So, you know, if you go use this time, like I said, use this time, prepare, create, get excited about what you want, and write a great pitch, create a great proposal, whatever it is you need to do, make that show reel. You can do it in your house. You don't have to be outside. So yeah, just don't let anything stop your creativity.
Such great advice. Thank you, Remel. And now we've got a question in from Mark. And Mark's asked, Mark wants to be a radio presenter on commercial radio. And he has asked, what would be your top tips for getting into the industry? Now, I'm going to slightly spin this question because what I would like to know is what's kind of the greatest tip, the greatest piece of advice that you've been given by someone else in the media world. So I would love you to share the best knowledge that you've been given. Darby, we'll come around to each of you, but Darby, if we start with you.
Sure. So I would say be tenacious. Don't take no for an answer. So if you believe in yourself and believe in your ideas. So the amount of times I've had ideas knocked back that, the first time round, like a program idea or a documentary idea that we submitted, and it's taken like 6 years, maybe like 5-6 years of attempts of trying to get it through and different kind of recreations of it, different versions of it. And then it gets commissioned. And it's like, if you hadn't had that kind of persistence to get through with your idea and believe in it, which is what someone told me that really, really early on, a commissioning editor. And that's kind of always sat with me. And it's true. It's definitely true. If you believe in your ideas, you think it's right, even when other people might not quite get it. Maybe you just haven't sold it in the right way, or you haven't quite explained it right. But that doesn't mean that your idea isn't right in its core, and it doesn't mean it's a bad idea. So yeah, be persistent and be pushy, basically.
Yeah, great advice. Be persistent, and also, as you say, really think about the way you sell in your idea. So perhaps you are doing work experience next year, and you've got this great idea, and you think about how you pitch that into the producer. So true. Swarzy, what about you? What is the best bit of advice that somebody has given you in the media industry?
The best piece of advice that someone's given me, I have to shout out Rozeena Barnard, an absolute legend in the radio game. And when we sat down, he said something so key. He said, Swarzy, you need to be indispensable. And let me break that down. That means, what is it that you can do that no one else can do as good as you, that if they dropped you, it would be such a problem to replace you? And that's really good advice, because all of us have a real passion for something, and we've got a talent there that you've been honing in and working on, and you probably can do it with your eyes closed. So the question is, what is that skill? What is it that you can bring to the table and talk about all day long with such passion and knowledge that makes you credible about that topic? And so in an industry that is very saturated, in an industry where everyone's trying to be the next presenter, what is it that you can bring about a particular topic that someone can come along on and say, we need that person to talk about this? Well, it's your name that's going to pop up. And so take absolute pride in the passion that you have, and make sure that you sound as credible as possible. Because the minute you start sounding like someone else, you'll lose all your listeners, because those people will go and listen to that person who sounds authentic. So make sure that your voice sounds credible, and really, really just absolutely go in on the topics that you love.
Great advice. Remel, what about you?
Oh, okay. So mine was TV focused, but I think it applies to everything, because, a lot of you are making audio reels as well. And this was based on the fact that I was told, if you're making a show reel, make sure you put in the content that you want people to see in your future. So for example, I know we're always getting work experience. We're always trying to gather content and just get anything. It's great to get anything for practice, but the things you put in your show reel have to be the very best you, and exactly, it has to reflect what you want to come to you as well. So for example, if you love everything sports, but all of your show reel was about music, you're not going to get a sports show, because all you've done is music. If you really are interested in, the environment, or you want to be the next David Attenborough, make sure you get content that's really, really centers to what you want and what you're trying to do. Of course, use as much great content as you can in a reel always. But if you're really trying to pitch something or you know, get certain types of jobs in a particular industry, you really have to kind of show them, this is what I'm capable of. Imagine if you got behind me, how big it could be. So that's why a lot of the time I've created a lot of the content I want to see on TV myself, because I'm like, hey guys, this isn't here. Imagine if you guys help me do this, this would be a hit. So I always say, if you've got an idea and you feel like you've got a gap in the market and you can be, like Swarzy was saying, you can be like indispensable, make it, show them, and get out there. And again, pitch, network, meet the right producers, commissioners, and hopefully, fingers crossed, your dreams will actually come to fruition.
Not only is that great advice, but it also answers Jamil's question about show reels. So thank you for that. Double whammy. I
didn't realise.
There you go. Rozeena, what about you? As Radio 2 legend Steve Wright giving you a gem? Has anybody in media industry told you something that you think everybody needs to hear?
Yeah, it's more of a way of working. When I joined the Steve Wright show on my internship, they really emphasized starting your work early and getting things done. Don't leave it to the last minute, and also preparation. So starting things early means that if it doesn't work or there's a problem, you've got enough time to fix it before the show goes live. Also preparation, because if you don't prep, when things do go wrong, like what we were saying earlier, then it's hard to fix that problem. So it's a lot of just kind of being strict and rigid with your working style, and it will help you in the long run. Because I've not worked on many shows that run really last minute, but I don't think it's the best working environment. And I think you'll be more confident if you're a presenter or even if you're a producer, if you know that everything you've done for this show, you've prepped it, you've checked it, and it's correct and it's good to go. So yeah, that was something. There's so many different things that I've learned on that show. Honestly, I could be here for hours, but yeah, that was one of them. And another thing actually is being aware of a lot of things that are going on around you, not just what's happening on Radio 2. And I think on Steve's show, if anybody listens to it, he's the king of being aware of all the different aspects of the music industry, the showbiz industry, and keeping on top of it. And as times change, he's constantly changing and keeping relevant. I think that's also really good advice for anyone in radio or TV, because it's keeping all of his audience, because our audience is quite varied. So he's keeping all of our audience engaged because he's interacting with different areas of the industry. So yeah, that's definitely another thing as well.
Yeah, brilliant advice there. We've got some great questions in. Swarzy, this is one for you from Chelsea. She would like to know if you know of any resources, events, or competitions that she can enter to get into radio.
Hi, Chels. Thank you very much for your question. Gosh, yeah, there's so many different events, you know. Keep yourself plugged with Radiocentre. I think Creative Access is also a really good shout. And look out for KISS. Hopefully we'll do the KISS Chosen One competition again. And be ready. And when it comes around, I beg you just apply. It always comes around and then people get scared and don't want to do it. But the key is have good people around you to encourage you and say things that you wouldn't naturally say to yourself. And then when you apply, let people know so they can hold you accountable and you can do it as a joint effort. Because it's so hard to always put yourself out there. It's so difficult or very intimidating to have all the confidence at every point. So tell your friends, tell your family, and also just going back to one of your questions, George, listen back to your content. You always want to be improving. You always want to listen back to an interview and think, how can I do that better? How can I ask that question differently next time? So yeah, be critical of yourself, but also let your friends and family know. So when the competition does come up, you're going to make sure you go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And Charles, by the way, if you are under 18, the Young Audio Awards is another competition for you. I will tell you a bit more about that towards the end. We've got another question in here. Again, it's anonymous. So I'm going to ask Darby if you've got an opinion on this. Do you have any advice for someone looking to make a career change into radio? What's a good way to get experience alongside working full time? So I actually think that experience element is the interesting part here. You know, what is the best way to go about getting work experience, especially when sometimes work experience doesn't pay?
Yeah, it's really hard, and it's even harder now because of the current climate, which is making it just like, I don't envy you guys with that at the moment. It's hard. But I think it comes back to the point about reaching out to people. So, you know, sometimes you might be able, again, kind of park what I'm saying slightly about the current climate with coronavirus, which, you know, I'm sure things will improve and change again a bit more soon. But, you know, getting in touch with people on shows that you like and appreciate is a really good start point, because you might not necessarily be able to have a full internship or work experience opportunity with them that would last a period of weeks, but they might be able to offer you, you know, an insight into how the show's made, or they might be able to offer you to come into the studio to see, you know, something being made, which is a really good start point. That's what I did, actually. That's what I did when I was at university, and did that with a number of different networks and producers who kind of just gave me a little bit of their time, and I found that really useful. So that's a really good start point. And then I would look at, similar to what we're saying, really around ways of you know, kind of entering competitions for presenting. It just get digging basically about the kind of internship schemes that are out there, and also have a look at the, you know, production companies like ours run work experience you know, programs, and lots of them do. And actually, I think that hopefully the dial is moving a bit on this now, that that some of these are being more kind of live. People are being more live to the challenges that people face, i.e. not necessarily being able to like give up their time free to work for like 2-3 weeks on an internship they're not getting paid for. So, you know, some of these kind of internships that companies like ours would be putting out would be paid, or they'd be flexible as well. So it might not be 5 days a week. So we might be able to work it around something else that you're doing, whether that be education or paid work. You know, and there are more and more of them out there. Again, at the moment, it's slightly difficult because of coronavirus. But again, going back to what I think Remel was saying earlier, use this time to put together a list of the kind of people that you could go to. You know, obviously there's big schemes like the ones run by the BBC. There's much smaller ones that you'll get by smaller independent production companies, you know, and Global and Bauer, and you know, there's a huge amount out there. So I would say look at those, as well as kind of honing in maybe on some producers behind your favorite podcasts or radio shows.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is it's an obvious statement, but radio stations and audio organizations should want to reflect the broad makeup of the nation in order to produce content that is interesting to the wider nation. So Remel, I'll start with you on this one. But what else do you think that as an audio industry, and equally people getting into the audio industry, could do to ensure that the sector represents all different types of people all across the UK?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Well, for a little plug here, my podcast is actually about getting into the industry. It's called The Mainstream, and it's literally looking at how people from particularly... to be fair, I think my guests have varied from like Clara Ampho to Vic Hope to Mo Gilligan, the comedian, all people who are Black or minority. I had Mim Sheikh, who's from BBC Asian Network, Mandeep Dillon, who's an actress, Asian actress, who have all been amazing at their particular craft, but they might not have had the specific entry and, you know, the traditional, I went to uni, studied this and got this and that. So I feel like it's important that we share stories and opportunities like this where people can hear different ways, because everyone has a unique journey into the industry. And, you know, and I think by speaking to different people from different backgrounds, you can understand, like Swarzy said, she learned about media from her church youth group. Like, that is a particular environment that is nurturing her. And then some people might not even realize that by attending church, you can join a youth group and you can learn new skills. Or, for example, myself, like, I went to uni, but I also I was a part of the Afro-Caribbean Society, which taught me how to manage events. I did a lot of extracurricular things. I did musical theatre. And again, there's so many stories and journeys into the industry. I think if you listen and research and you're open to hearing different experiences, you can learn a lot from that. So I'm really big on understanding people's journeys. So I love documentaries and love podcasts that are storytelling. For example, there's a podcast called Strong Black Lead, which is about all of actors and actresses from the Black community. It's an American-based one. It's from Netflix, and I've heard so many stories of like Whoopi Goldberg and like Cicely Tyson. These historic women and men who have had incredible journeys. I think if we are accessible to more stories, journeys, we can learn a lot from our peers, our elders, people in the new wave. There's so much to learn. So I'm a big advocate of just sharing stories as much as possible.
Rozeena, what do you think, coming from especially a behind the mic, behind the presenter at least, perspective?
I think it's great to be encouraging more voices from different backgrounds, especially in the show that I work on, because we have loads of guests and stuff. I think when I'm working and my colleagues are working, we're looking to make sure that we have showbiz guests from all different backgrounds who can share their voices, because it's important to hear different voices, because as a radio station, and I've said this to my colleagues, we're technically in people's daily lives. They wake up and they listen to us. They go to work and it's just playing, and it's something that they grow up with. Their parents listen to it, therefore they listen to it. So I think media has an important, or radio or anything, has a real importance to show the world we live in, and so everyone understands that that's the norm. And so obviously there's a conversation now that not necessarily all medias are showing what the world around them is. And so I'm glad that we're all taking steps now to show the world we live in, and it will become a norm, because I listen to the radio from the moment I wake up pretty much to the moment I go to sleep. And so if I'm hearing loads of different voices, that's what I'm going to know as the norm, and I'm going to tell my kids that, and our friends will talk as if it's the norm. So yeah, I definitely think we're moving in the right direction, and it's really important to get diverse voices out there.
And I would just say that I think within radio, there's a real shift at the moment, a real positive shift. Because if we're being totally transparent, a lot of Black people are missing at leadership levels within radio, in my experience, and they're missing from a lot of the rooms, and they're not always at the table. And so then when we ask about content and who's watching what and what's getting lots of views, you're missing out on a whole area or a whole audience that loves radio and loves audio but cannot see themselves in the radio industry. And so if you are from a Black or minority ethnic group background, your voice is so key, because you have weight in that room to say, I want to talk about this, and I've got a lived experience of that. And the minute you are authentic and you share about your experience, there's such a space there and such an ear to be listened to, that by the time you get into radio, I hope there would be a platform, there would be a radio show for you to absolutely be full fleshed out with your story. So yeah, I think it's really about diversifying radio all the way through, right from the top to the bottom, but also making sure that from behind the scenes and behind the mic, there are people who look like you and want to hear from you.
Yeah, 100%. Thanks for that, Swarzy. Georgia has asked, hi, question for everyone. Do you have any tips for coming up with show content, keeping your reoccurring segments fresh? I think that's such an interesting question for both the budding presenters and producers out there who, you lot live off the content you create. So it would be great to hear just a really quick tip from each of you about how you go about creating content. Is there something that you do in order to kind of spot things in the world around you, maybe? Darby, should I come to you next?
Yeah, and it sounds like that question's specific to kind of live radio from the gist of it, from what you said, George. So I would say one thing that's really good is to just kind of be as diverse as possible in what you're consuming. So don't just consume the obvious stuff. Don't just go to BBC News or app or, the obvious places. Go there, but also go to the deep dive stuff, the kind of niche stuff, the quirky stuff you find on Twitter or wherever else. Spend time trying to really diversify what you're reading, what you're consuming in terms of the content that you're absorbing. And that might lead you to interesting stories, stuff that other people, aren't finding. And it kind of just means that you're going to be more live to kind of more of a kind of wider pool of kind of opportunity that you might be able to fold into. And that's relevant from creating a new documentary idea for Radio 4 through to, kind of keeping a feature live on a, really kind of fresh on a daily music program. So, just kind of really absorb as much as you can and keep it, read the stuff you don't want to read. If you don't like reading the Daily Mail, read something from the Daily Mail.
And Remel, what about you? Does music play a big role for you?
I mean, yeah, when it comes to content, I think and features. And, you know, I was on Leeds Student Radio as well. Sometimes just do the things that you'd love to hear. So, for example, for Freshers Week at Leeds Uni, we used to have Give It a Go, and you could literally sign up to any society and give it a go. So I was like, I'm gonna do I'm gonna do a feature where I give every society a go, and I'm gonna review it. And it was so funny because I literally did everything that I wanted to do and created some really fun audio, and I cut it up. So I went fencing. So I was like, guys, can you like rub the swords together so I can get some audio? And it just sounded so ridiculous, but it was just me being able to be me and being like, okay, I just tried cheerleading. It was ridiculous. You can hear me saying, give it an A, B, whatever. So, you know, think of how you can be as creative, but be yourself, most importantly. A feature is always going to reflect you. So, you know, eventually you'll be able to do your chart show or whatever it is. But right now, if you're creating content, do something that you really want to make yourself stand out and have fun with it. Make some really cool audio. That's what I love doing.
Absolutely. I remember Christian O'Connell, who used to present Absolute Radio Breakfast Show. I remember hearing him say that whenever he saw something in his life that he thought that's hilarious or my listeners would like it, he'd make a little note on his iPhone in his notes. And then the next day for the show, he'd come in with a whole list of things that he could talk about. He's just witnessed and experienced in his life, which I thought was brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay, last but not least, Rozeena, what about you? When, you know, I'm assuming you kind of fairly often will come up with an idea and you'll take it into the team at Radio 2. So what do you think about that question?
I think everyone's pretty much summed up what I was going to say. It is a lot of looking at stuff that you don't normally look at. I think that is great, what Darby said, because that's definitely helped me a lot. And also, I like to look at what's trending, keep up with what's trending. If you're trying to get a younger audience or an older audience, look at what's going on around you and then maybe incorporate that into the show, put your own spin on it maybe. What else is there? Yeah, definitely pretty much what everyone else has said. Be yourself. Have really like what you like to hear, because that is a big one. What you like to hear, you may find that lots of other people like it too. So yeah, kind of reiterating what everyone said.
We are pretty much out of time for the masterclass today. Adam, a huge thank you to our amazing panel, Swarzy, Remel, Darby and Rozeena, and an even bigger thank you to all of you who've taken the time to watch today. As I say, huge apologies if we didn't get time to take your question, but we hope you found it useful. And do plan on hosting further events like this in the coming months. So make sure you are following Radiocentre on the socials to find out about those future events. Thank you very much.